With any other skill, we understand that it takes time to learn the fundamentals, practice them, and gain experience. So why would Agile be any different? That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Hey everybody, welcome back. Great to see you here. Thank you as always to all of the listeners, and especially welcome to the new people just joining us. Isn't it anti-agile to say that mastering agility takes a while? Well, first let's remember why we're here. To create an elite tribe of leaders who truly serve their clients and communities by doing what matters and what works, relentlessly chasing value and excellence like a badass. There's so many resources about what you need to do to be agile, but we're focused on who you need to become in order to lead teams. So let's hammer down those fundamentals to create a unique and powerful force in this industry. And if this helps you, tell your friends. Now, we should be able to go to an agile project in my project and portfolio management system and just click the uses agile checkbox in the project type field. And things should just go better, go faster, and cost less, right? Well, of course not. Because like any other skill, Agile is based on fundamentals that must be well understood, accepted as mindset, and then serve as the basis for all actions, decisions, and growth. You wouldn't sit down in a car for the first time, and just because you were finally, at long last, sitting on the side of the car that has the steering wheel in it, expect that you'll be adept, safe, or proficient at driving. It takes time to train the eyes, the mind, the muscles to act together in a coordinated way to not only keep the car straight on the road, but to react to different situations. So you need to learn what to be on the lookout for. You need to learn the different skills to move yourself out of trouble. And then someday, on long, complicated trips, you'll get to the space where you've learned the finer points through experience. So you'll learn, for example, you got to have the map out and programmed and ready before you get in the car. You should also have your ID, toll money, your car charger, everything set up and at the ready. And then there's some tools like a flashlight, screwdriver, and maybe some road salt or some sand that you should always have in the trunk. So these little bits of knowledge that keep your car and the whole experience of driving a car running smoothly take a long time to learn and build. And sure, you can learn them by watching somebody else, but you learn best when you do them for yourself. There are a lot of things that you won't learn until you yourself are good and ready. For example, no matter how much my parents told me to keep my car full of gas, it wasn't until I ran out a couple of times and I had to get my dad to come and get me that I truly understood the consequences of not heeding that advice. And likewise, it takes a soldier or a fighter a really long time to train in the fundamentals to the point where they become automatic enough that you can just survive in a real fight situation. So as in the last example, once again, the higher order skills like strategy and learning to adapt to the changing landscape quickly and efficiently takes years of practice to get to. So drivers and fighters alike, train up. You commit the time to diligent practice and continuous learning. We keep our expectations reasonable, and we don't put people into dangerous situations until they're ready and competent. Yet, how many times in your organization have you seen projects that have started using Agile just because they feel they ought to? And the resulting mess is that projects are agile in name only. They're doing some kind of stand-up. Maybe they're trying to deliver things in increments. They might even have a task board, some sticky notes, but that's really it. So the first thing you have to do is get your mindsets right. And let's recall, what are those mindsets? Well, this is nothing new. These are your 12 Agile principles. So the more face-to-face time that people spend together in the working environment, the better your results will be. That's the first mindset. There's no other way to get to that fast decision-making, better creativity, increased accountability than teamwork, face-to-face communication. Another mindset is learning to love failure. Because remember, failure is the engine of innovation. You have to take risks to learn what will and will not work. You have to empower teams. You have to push decisions downward. Let them make the fastest daily decisions that they need in the room. And you'll find that you spend less time than you thought correcting their choices and more time working on things that matter. And let's not forget the big one. The best way to increase speed is to give customers valuable things as often as you can. It's way easier to do the things I just mentioned, like embracing failure and empowering teams, if you have a system set up so that the worst you can do is go a week or two in the wrong direction before correcting course. Always trying to understand what your customer values and letting that guide your daily decisions and actions. Building the things you think they most value first and showing it to them. If you're wrong, you'll find out as quickly as humanly possible so that you can course correct and get back on track quickly. Here's another thing I think we're starting to forget. The people you lead don't need you to go to Harvard Business School. They need you to be there for them. Leadership has to be present to support the daily decisions, to enable teams to take risks, and to provide guidance only where necessary. Here's another mindset I think is crucial and is so often missed. Every day, you stand up to show your team not status, but to show your promises, or to raise the blockers that get in the way of keeping those promises. And finally, to never let a blocker go more than a couple of hours before resolving it or finding the next best workaround. I think the last mindset to adopt is always stretch, always learn. Create feedback loops so that you can get better and do it as often as is humanly possible. So these are not new. These are the mindsets we're always talking about. And once you've internalized those mindsets, now you need to go and do things that reflect and represent those mindsets and make your commitment to Agile real. So now, for example, the team has to learn how to build a backlog. It has to learn the best ways to do a retrospective. It has to learn the best ways to tune your estimation process, the best way to write stories. Now, here's the key thing to remember, and I don't think we harp on this enough. Most of those practices I just mentioned will be very specific to the team and its culture. So it's at this point where all the book learning about Agile has to very quickly translate or transition into real, practical experience. The team simply have to, as is the Agile style, try, fail, learn, and improve. Get them sleeves rolled up and see what happens. And the adjustments that you make will be adjustments that are right for your team, in your organization, for the particular scope you're working on. In fact, here's one of the things I find most notable about Agile, is that my previous experiences on projects directly inform how we run the next project. It was less about learning from books and more learning from being on great teams. So even when I was a business analyst or project manager back in the day, I remember well when a new Agile team would be starting up, and we would lean really heavily on the experience of people who had done it before to lead and explain what had worked well and what hadn't, so that we could choose the way forward that was likely to aid in our success. Now, we never knew. We had to try. And it's only through trial and error that teams will figure out what works well for them. How big should our stories be? What does 8 story points really mean to us? What's the best way for us to report metrics to the executive? Now, once you've covered the basic ability to do your job well, think of the equivalent of like a 12-week boot camp in the Army. You're ready to deploy. But of course, in the real world, nobody's willing to wait those 12 weeks for an Agile team to train up. So at this point, you've probably had 11 weeks of really bumpy road on a live project, and yet no one seems to be willing to wait those 11 weeks for teams to find their stride, to sort things out, and commit the fundamentals to muscle memory. But where else in the world do we do that? This is really poor expectation management. I always say that the first 3 to 4 sprints are mayhem. Expect it. And this is the part of the reason why. Teams need to practice to get experience, to reflect, to improve, and to tune. And that takes time. So if you don't give them a safe environment where they can play, then they're going to be taking on the failures and botched experiments at the cost of your live fire, real production project. So expect mistakes then. Expect that things will be slower than you had hoped. They may be even slower than they were before you chose to adopt Agile, and that's all okay. That has to be expectable. But after the mayhem is over, not only will the team be confident and coordinated, but they'll now start tuning higher order things that you didn't have access to tweaking before. Everything from cutting waste to paring down the backlog to the essentials, shortening release cycles, and so on. And they'll be able to take those learnings and help spread them across the organization to other teams. So, for example, I'm learning now that it's an important practice to cycle people in and out of those core bootstrap teams so that they can leave and share their learnings. But no matter how you slice it, all of this takes time. You cannot afford to be impatient with the process, and you can't expect results sooner than they're due. It's absolutely fun to put teams in pressure situations with deadlines that might even seem unreasonable sometimes, because those are great opportunities for stretching and growing. But if you expect to deliver things of high value and excellent quality, you really can't rush this process. It's just going to take how long it takes. So if you or your organization are new to Agile, give yourself some leeway in the beginning to practice fundamentals to perfection, to commit them to muscle memory, and to apply them in a way so that we can continuously learn and improve. And then we stretch our game so that we can move towards maximum productivity and maximum happiness. Looking for inspiration to help stay sharp and reinforce the badass Agile mindsets and practices? Then stop in every weekday and grab the latest iteration of my new book. Just go to badassagile.com and subscribe to get the coming week's pages right in your inbox, or check it out at medium.com and search for the working title, Field Notes for the Agile Leader. Folks, thank you for listening. You can reach out at badassagile.com or find me on Twitter at badass_agile. And I'll see you next time.